Late at night a young woman finally leaves her workplace after doing extra hours, and when she gets outside a group of men take the taxi she had spotted first, leaving her with no choice but to walk home alone, and as she makes her way down a dark road a van pulls up beside her and the driver, a man named Do-shik, offers to take her home, and she refuses because she does not want to get into a car with a stranger and keeps walking. And then she hears strange noises coming from behind her and turns around to find the van door open and the sound of someone crying and calling for help coming from inside, and when she walks closer and looks in she finds a pile of clothes and the body of a dead man, and before she can react Do-shik grabs her from behind and drags her inside the van and kills her before she can escape. Moments later Do-shik has changed into clean clothes and called emergency services. And when two police officers arrive he greets them while pretending to be incredibly distressed, and he points to where he left the bodies and claims he found them there by accident and tells the officers he saw a group of workers stab the woman, and the officers take his account without any suspicion. Some days later a young deaf woman named Kim Kyung-mi is at her desk in customer service where she handles calls from other deaf and mute customers by communicating with them through sign language over video calls. And just like any customer service job there are rude callers who insult her and give her the finger. Afterward she goes to pick up her deaf mother from her job at a tailor shop and nearly saves her from getting hit by a bike thanks to the sound sensor on her car, and her mother is happy because she has been paid well this month and now the two of them can finally take the beach vacation they have been planning together. In another part of the city a young woman named Choi Seo-young is getting ready to go out. But her brother Jong-tak who works as a security guard has been very overprotective since their parents died, and he argues with her about what she is wearing and what time she needs to be home, and she promises to behave but later that night she ignores his texts while she is on a date and does not come home when she said she would, and since she is not picking up her phone Jong-tak decides to go out and look for her. That same late night Do-shik goes out looking for another victim, and he spots Kyung-mi leaving her mother near an alarm post while she goes to find a parking spot, and he starts moving toward her. But at that exact moment Seo-young appears walking down the same street and Do-shik decides he will target her instead, and he runs and jumps on her quickly and goes unnoticed because Kyung-mi's mother is walking the other way and cannot hear anything, and after he is done with Seo-young he moves toward the mother. But his plans keep getting interrupted because Jong-tak passes by and stops to ask the mother if she has seen his sister and leaves after getting a negative answer. And then Kyung-mi returns from the parking lot. On her way back to meet her mother Kyung-mi notices a white shoe suddenly appearing from a dark alley, and then a second shoe follows, and she decides to go inside the alley and finds a crying and bleeding Seo-young on the ground asking for help, and before Kyung-mi can do anything Do-shik appears from the shadows carrying an axe and jumps at her but Seo-young pushes him away giving Kyung-mi just enough time to run. And Kyung-mi makes it back to the street and when she spots her mother she deliberately runs in the opposite direction to draw Do-shik away from her and protect her. She goes back to the parking lot and hides among the cars while making her way carefully toward the back door which has a very squeaky handle, and she begins opening it as slowly as she can but Do-shik hears the noise and comes after her. And thankfully she gets through the door just in time. Do-shik appears on the back seat with a knife in his hand, and he forces her to drive, but instead of taking him out of the building she drives straight toward the wall and stops right before impact and uses the moment of confusion to escape the car, and Kyung-mi manages to reach her mother before Do-shik can catch her, and she presses the alarm button which prevents Do-shik from coming any closer, and while the two women wait for the police he retreats to his van and hides Seo-young's body inside, and then he changes his clothes and fixes his hairstyle to look like an ordinary businessman and approaches the women with a calm and casual expression. Kyung-mi does not recognize him because the killer was wearing a mask and a hat when she saw him, and when this man tells her he is looking for his missing sister she believes him and is about to take him to the dark alley when the police arrive, but when the officer checks the alley it is completely empty. And Kyung-mi asks to see the security cameras but the parking lot guard shows them the cameras were turned off by kids who hang around there to smoke, and all three of them are taken to the police station to make proper reports. In the elevator Do-shik keeps glancing at the weapons inside his bag and Kyung-mi's mother notices that he does not look very sad for a man searching for his missing sister, and to keep up his act Do-shik pulls out a black phone from his bag and tells them he has just received a text from his sister which means the body the police found was not hers and he is relieved. And at the station Kyung-mi finishes giving her statement but the officer cannot do much without a physical description of the killer or a body to confirm anything, and Do-shik tries to help but the officer scolds him for interrupting another person's statement. A man who has been sleeping on a nearby couch takes the chance to insult Do-shik for being scolded, and the man immediately jumps on Do-shik in a rage, and during the struggle Do-shik drops a white phone on the floor which Kyung-mi's mother picks up, and the officer pulls the man away and takes him to another room, and Do-shik takes his phone back and uses the excuse of reading Kyung-mi's statement to look at her personal information. While he is reading, the mother signs to Kyung-mi that it is suspicious for a man to be carrying two different phones, and when Do-shik notices the two women signing to each other, he demands to know what they are talking about, and Kyung-mi simply writes the word nothing for him to read, and Do-shik turns to the mother and begins going through the weapons in his bag, thinking about what to do next. And at that moment a police officer brings Jong-tak in to report his missing sister, and the officer asks him to show the photo to the other three since the description matches Kyung-mi's statement, and Do-shik pretends he has never seen the girl, but Kyung-mi immediately recognizes her and hands Jong-tak her written statement to read, and while she tries to give him more details, the officer steps out to deal with the man who tried to re-enter the station. Do-shik uses that moment to move close to the mother and tells her not to move or he will kill Kyung-mi, and he shows her what is inside his bag and takes out a knife and moves toward her daughter, but the mother manages to make a loud enough noise to alert everyone in the room, and Jong-tak turns around just in time and stops the knife, and the two men begin fighting while the women go outside and call the other officers over. And during the struggle, Do-shik admits he hurt Hye-yoon, which sends Jong-tak into a fury, and he beats Do-shik viciously and grabs the knife and holds it to his neck, demanding to know where his sister is, but the officers interrupt them and Do-shik plays the victim, and because of how the situation looks the officers believe him and arrest Jong-tak instead while Do-shik walks free. The women stay with Jong-tak while the police check the security cameras, which confirm the women were telling the truth all along, and Jong-tak is released and goes back to the streets to search for his sister, and the police take Kyung-mi and her mother back to their apartment, which is fitted with motion-sensitive lights that blink whenever they detect movement. And while the mother and daughter sit together having tea, the lights warn them of someone at the door very late at night, but it turns out to be the mother's co-worker who has come to pick up some bags, and the two elderly women leave together, leaving Kyung-mi alone in the apartment. What Kyung-mi does not know is that Do-shik has already arrived and broken the sensor outside the front door so the light will not reveal his location, and once she goes back to her room he quietly disables all the remaining sensors in the apartment while she texts Jong-tak using the card he gave her earlier. Do-shik picks up his axe and gets ready to strike, but at that moment Kyung-mi notices a toy on the dresser has activated, yet the lights are not responding to anything, and she turns around just in time to dodge Do-shik's attack and runs to another room and pushes a heavy dresser in front of the door, and she sends a text to Jong-tak telling him the murderer is inside the apartment, and she also texts her mother telling her not to come back home, and then as the door stops shaking she receives a text appearing to be from her mother saying she is already at the door and found it open and asking for help. Kyung-mi begins moving the dresser back to go help her mother, but as more texts arrive asking for help she notices they are spelled perfectly and her mother normally does not type that well, and she realizes Do-shik has her mother's phone and stops moving the dresser just in time as he appears in the gap of the door trying to grab her hand, and she pulls it back and locks the door in his face. And Do-shik begins destroying the door with his axe to force his way inside, and with no other way out. Kyung-mi jumps from the window but Do-shik grabs her by the hair as she falls, and she struggles hard against his grip until he finally lets go and she drops safely onto a pile of trash below. She starts running again and Do-shik goes after her, and soon Jong-tak finds them and joins the chase, and after running through dozens of blocks Do-shik corners Kyung-mi in a closed area and is about to attack when Jong-tak arrives. And to stop him from getting closer Do-shik puts his own knife against his own neck and threatens to kill himself, which means Jong-tak would never find out where his sister is, and with Jong-tak frozen in place Do-shik sends a text to his phone with Hye-yoon's supposed location and forces him to choose between the two girls, and Jong-tak apologizes to Kyung-mi and runs toward the address given, which turns out to be Kyung-mi's own house. And obviously Do-shik lied and the place is empty and Jong-tak only finds the mother when she arrives back there. Meanwhile Kyung-mi tries to grab a chair from the trash to defend herself but Do-shik takes it from her and uses it to pin her to the ground. She grabs a handful of dirt and throws it directly into Do-shik's face and uses the distraction to push him off and start running again. And when she reaches the street where his van is parked she sees the door swinging open and Hye-yoon stumbling out of it holding a knife and asking for help, and as the mother and Jong-tak reach the closed area and find it empty the two girls hide together in an alley behind a large trash container. Kyung-mi wants Hye-yoon to call emergency services but she refuses because she can hear Do-shik close by, and Do-shik has also discovered there is no body left in the van. So Kyung-mi comes up with a plan and writes a message on her phone telling Hye-yoon to call her brother because he is nearby, and she gives Hye-yoon the phone and takes the knife from her in return, and while Do-shik has his back turned Kyung-mi slips out of the alley and hides, and she only comes back out when Do-shik is about to find Hye-yoon, and she makes a sound with her mouth and shakes a nearby metal shutter to get his attention, Do-shik immediately goes after her and Kyung-mi presses the alarm on the pole again and starts running through the streets once more while Seo-young calls her brother for help, and Jong-tak and the mother rush toward her location and Seo-young tells them which direction Kyung-mi has run so they can follow, and this time Kyung-mi runs toward the busiest part of the city hoping that more people around will make it harder for Do-shik to act, and she tries to ask people around her for help but since she cannot speak clearly they ignore her, and Do-shik is closing in so she pulls out the knife to defend herself which makes everyone around her step back and form a circle around them. A man in the crowd tries to call the police but Do-shik stops him by telling everyone that Kyung-mi is his sister who has mental health problems and that bringing the police will only scare her into hurting herself, and Kyung-mi uses that moment of distraction to run away, but a short time later the police find her and bring her back to Do-shik believing the sister's story completely, and they even hand the knife back to him. And once the officers leave Kyung-mi sits in front of Do-shik and she begs him not to kill her because she still has so much left to do. And not wanting to do this in front of witnesses Do-shik takes her into a nearby alley and tells her she almost convinced him but it was not quite enough, and he gets ready to stab her, and then Jong-tak arrives and stops him just in time. The two men fight hard and Jong-tak manages to get his arm around Do-shik's neck and choke him until he passes out, and Jong-tak lets go and goes to check on Kyung-mi and tells her that Seo-young is safe at the hospital and her mother is nearby, and then Do-shik suddenly attacks from behind because he was only pretending to be unconscious, and he hits Jong-tak with empty bottles and pieces of trash from the alley. And Kyung-mi picks up the knife to get him to stop, and Do-shik decides to leave the alley and go after the mother instead, and he finds her standing in the middle of the commercial area and approaches her and asks her to follow him somewhere. At that moment Kyung-mi spots them and runs toward him with the knife, because she immediately turns the knife around and stabs herself with it and places the weapon back in his hands, making it look to everyone watching as though he stabbed her, and the crowd steps back and nobody listens when Do-shik insists he did not do it, and the police arrive and fire warning shots into the air, but Do-shik keeps moving and they shoot him in the body twice, and even that is not enough to stop him completely, and when Kyung-mi provokes him further he tries one last time to get to her. And at that moment Seo-young arrives and tackles him to the ground where he finally dies. Many days later Kyung-mi and her mother go to the beach to have the vacation they had been dreaming about together, and Seo-young and Jong-tak join them there, and after showing the women how much sign language they have been learning the four of them take a photo together on the beach. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a video like this.